ever get that feeling? Like the world's changing faster than you can keep up with it.
Yeah, definitely. Feels like it's accelerating every day.
Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today, the digital transformation of the banking industry.
And how that impacts, everyone listening, those potential pitfalls for customers, especially those who aren't really paying attention to this shift. And crucially, how to make sure you're not one of them.
Music to my ears. We'll be using a fascinating article from UXDA, a financial UX design company, as our guide for this journey.
UX design for banking. Sounds interesting. Go on.
Right. So they actually use a really thought-provoking analogy comparing the state of banking right now to a predicament NASA recently faced.
Okay. Color me intrigued. Let's hear it.
So picture this. NASA, they need to bring their astronauts back from, the International Space Station.
Like routine mission, you'd think.
Exactly. But here's the thing. There were issues with Boeing's Starliner capsule. That was the vessel originally planned for the return trip.
The Starliner. Wasn't that supposed to be like the next big thing for space travel?
Exactly. But yeah, technical difficulties, to put it mildly. Think helium leaks, malfunctioning thrusters.
Oh, not what you want to hear when you're like strapped on top of a rocket, that's for sure.
Not at all. Definitely not reassuring.
So what'd they do?
So NASA, very understandably, decided not to risk it.
Probably a good call.
Why?
What was the alternative?
Well, luckily, SpaceX was, waiting in the wings with their reusable rockets. They've already got this proven track record, right?
Yeah, right. SpaceX has been killing it lately. So I'm guessing they're the ones who ended up bringing those astronauts home.
You guessed it. SpaceX swoops in for the rescue.
Kind of makes you think, even in these industries, space travel that we think of as like the pinnacle of human achievement and technology, things can change in a heartbeat.
And they do,
Right.
constantly. So the article draws this really interesting parallel between this whole NASA situation and, traditional banks.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. Lay it on me.
So traditional banks, they're kind of like Boeing in this analogy. Big, powerful, long history of success.
But maybe not as quick to adapt to this, like, new world of finance.
Precisely. The article argues that they risk being left behind as technology progresses, customer expectations are changing, all of that.
And just like NASA ultimately went with a company that could, best meet their needs at that moment, you might need to start thinking about alternatives if your bank is dragging its feet.
Exactly. I mean, you wouldn't get on a rocket that you didn't trust to get you home safely, would you?
Not a chance. So are you saying traditional banks could become the Boeing, so to speak, of the financial world? And these nimble little fintech companies, they're like the SpaceX.
It's a really fascinating analogy, and it's a question the article wants us to really grapple with.
It's interesting because this pattern, it keeps popping up, right? Industries undergoing these massive disruptions. I'm thinking media, retail, even transportation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, remember Blockbuster?
Right.
Talk about being caught off guard by the rise of streaming services like Netflix. Totally blindside.
Exactly. Classic example. And let's not forget about the taxi industry, right?
Oh.
Then suddenly, boom, ride-sharing apps like Uber and Lyft show up.
It's wild how quickly things can shift.
It really is. And what often gets overlooked is how these established players, the big guys, often underestimate the impact of these new technologies and, crucially, how consumer behavior is changing right alongside them.
And in this case, the rise of, like you said, those fintech companies, but also specifically neobanks. So for those who might not be as familiar, what exactly are we talking about when we say neobank?
That's a great question. They're essentially digital-first banks.
Yeah.
They pretty much operate entirely online, so they don't have the burden of physical branches and all those legacy systems that traditional banks are often stuck with.
Makes sense. So less overhead, less bureaucracy.
Exactly. And that allows them to be way more agile, offer things like lower fees. And they could really focus on crafting that seamless digital experience that today's customers expect.
And the article brought up Nubank as a prime example of this, right?
Yeah, Nubank's a great example. They've seen explosive growth, particularly in Latin America. They've managed to attract millions of customers.
Really? Millions?
Millions. And get this, in a fraction of the time, it took those big, established banking giants to do the same.
Wow. That's really saying something.
It really is. It speaks volumes about where customer demand is headed. People want these modern, tech-focused solutions for their banking needs.
So it's not just a fad. It seems like we're potentially facing this huge fundamental shift in how we bank.
Yeah.
But what does that really mean for the average person? I mean, what are the actual real-world implications of sticking with a bank that's slow to adapt, that's not keeping up with all of this?
That is the million-dollar question. And the article, to its credit, does not shy away from some of the potential dangers. Because it's not just about missing out on the latest app features or, a cool new interface.
Right. There's got to be more to it than that.
Exactly. It goes much deeper.
Mm-hmm.
The article actually uses this, well, it's a bit of a chilling quote, but it stuck with me. Something like, the more we rely on these advanced technologies, the more vulnerable we become if those technologies aren't properly safeguarded.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, that's a bit unsettling.
Right. And this vulnerability, it manifests in several ways. First and foremost, there's that risk of cybersecurity threats.
That's a big one these days, for sure.
Huge. So if your bank is still using, outdated systems and security protocols, your data could be at risk.
And these data breaches, it seems like we're hearing about them more and more these days.
All the time. And the consequences for everyday people can be really severe.
So it's almost like, and I'm thinking about this analogy, it's like leaving your front door unlocked in a bad neighborhood, right?
Exactly. You wouldn't do that with your physical security, so why do we even think twice about our financial security? But it goes beyond just cybersecurity, too. There's also the risk of, being left behind as financial services become more personalized, more convenient elsewhere.
You touched on this earlier, missing out on opportunities because your bank is stuck in the slow lane.
Precisely. Imagine needing a loan for, say, a new home or to start a business, right? But your bank is still all about the paper applications and these, ridiculously long approval processes.
Been there.
Right. Meanwhile, you've got these fintech companies. They can approve you with a few clicks on your phone, lower interest rates, better terms, the whole 9 yards. And that opportunity in today's world, it can be gone in a flash while you're waiting for your bank to catch up.
It's true. Everything's moving so fast.
Exactly. And another thing, these fintech companies, they're not just doing loans anymore.
Right, right. They've really branched out, haven't they?
Absolutely. You've got investment management, budgeting tools, even insurance. All of it tailored to, how we live and manage money in the digital age. And often, here's the kicker, at a fraction of the cost of those traditional institutions.
So we're not just talking about a slightly outdated app here or there. We're talking about potentially missing out on a whole world of financial opportunities and even, like you said, putting our financial well-being at risk.
And now you're getting it. And again, this isn't to scare anyone, but it's a call to action.
Yeah.
We need to be aware of these potential pitfalls and be proactive about protecting ourselves.
So what can we do? It feels like, I don't know, we're standing on the launch pad watching this rocket of the future of finance blast off without us.
Well, that's where this UXDA article comes in handy. It gives us some clues. It outlines 10 ways these traditional banks can actually, up their game to stay relevant.
And I'm hoping this list isn't just for the bankers out there. We can use this, right, as a guide to evaluate our own banks.
Absolutely. Think of it as a checklist for the modern banking customer.
Okay, I love a good checklist. So what are we looking for?
Well, the article really hammers home this idea of customer-centric innovation. Are you seeing that from your bank? Are they really, truly prioritizing your needs, making your experience easier, faster, more personalized?
That's a good point. It's really easy to get caught up in all the marketing hype. But are they walking the walk when it comes to customer experience?
Exactly. And then, going beyond that, look at how they're embracing new tech. Are they stuck with these old, clunky systems? Or are they adopting AI, open banking, things like that, to actually improve their services?
You keep mentioning open banking. Can you unpack that a bit more for us? That sounds kind of important.
Well, it's a game changer. In the simplest terms, it lets you securely share your own financial data with other providers.
Okay, so what does that mean for me, practically speaking?
So it means you can compare offers from different institutions. You can manage all your finances, ideally, in one place. And it opens up this whole world of more personalized financial services.
So if my bank isn't really on board with open banking, that's probably not a good sign, is it?
It could be a sign that they're not as invested in staying on the cutting edge and, offering their customers the best possible options.
Makes sense. Anything else for our checklist?
Oh, cybersecurity. Can't forget that one. With all this innovation happening, it's absolutely vital that your bank is prioritizing data protection. Are they transparent about their security measures? Do they have a good track record?
Right. Like you said earlier, we can't afford to be complacent about our financial safety these days. It's too big of a risk. So if I'm listening to all of this and I'm, starting to feel a little unsure about my bank, what do I do? What's the next step?
First of all, don't panic, but Definitely don't be passive either. I would say start by asking your bank some tough questions. What are they doing to actually stay innovative,
Yep.
to keep your information secure? How are they adapting to this digital revolution in a way that truly benefits you as a customer?
I like that. It's about being an informed customer, an empowered customer, not just blindly trusting an institution because it's always been there, right?
Exactly. And while you're at it, don't be afraid to shop around. Look into those neobanks and fintech companies we were talking about. You might be surprised at what you find. They often have these incredibly innovative services, these personalized experiences that you might not find at your, traditional brick and mortar bank.
This has been really eye-opening. We hear a lot about this digital transformation stuff, but this deep dive has really brought it home for me, how much it impacts us on an individual level, especially with something as crucial as our finances.
It really does. And the main takeaway here is you have more control over your financial journey than you might realize. Don't just settle for the status quo. Demand more from your banking experience. Explore the options that are out there. The power is really shifting into the hands of the consumer.
Great advice to end on. And on that note, here's a final thought-provoking question for everyone listening. This whole Boeing versus SpaceX scenario, this clash of the titans, the old guard versus the new disruptors, it's not just banking, is it? It's happening everywhere.
Everywhere. Healthcare, education, entertainment, you name it. It's a pattern.
So the challenge for all of us is to stay informed, stay curious, and be ready to adapt, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. The future belongs to those who embrace change and always keep asking, what's next?
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder that very question. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.